Welcome to Behind Closed Doors, the show that gives you an extraordinary sneak preview of buildings you just wouldn't usually be able to see, apart from once a year when they throw open their doors and declare open house. On today's show, I'll be going behind closed doors to explore the spiritual home of modern science. It's absolutely spectacular. Discovering which 900-year-old hospital houses some of Britain's most inspirational and valuable art.
Roughly $3 million for the pair.
Wow. And getting backstage at one of Britain's most exciting and dynamic theatres. Throughout the series, I'll be bringing you my own personal preview of just a few of the amazing buildings you can see as part of a series of very special events taking place throughout the country. This is extraordinary. Today, my journey takes me to buildings of inspiration. In other words, architecture that has brought some of our very biggest ideas to the masses, but also buildings that have been groundbreaking in themselves. My first building has its origins more than 900 years ago. And from very humble beginnings, it has stood the test of time. Having survived Henry VIII and the Reformation, the Great Fire of London, 2 world wars, and perhaps its most serious threat, NHS bureaucracy. It is St Bartholomew's Hospital, affectionately known as Barts, and it is the oldest surviving hospital in England. The hospital was founded with the Priory of St Bartholomew in 1123. The original idea was to attach buildings for the sick to a monastery and for the brethren to look after the patients. And this is what makes Barts unique among English hospitals today, because it remains a parish in its own right. There were originally 5 chapels within the old hospital, and this is the only surviving one. It sits just inside the main gate, and it is the hospital's own parish church of St Bartholomew the Less. And actually, this tower and these bits of stonework here date back to the 1400s. They're the oldest surviving buildings anywhere on the site. Because Barts relied on the monks and nuns to care for the sick, when in 1539 Henry VIII closed the priory as part of his nationwide dissolution of the monasteries, the hospital struggled to survive. The days of St Bartholomew seemed well and truly numbered, but Londoners weren't going to give it up so easily. So they petitioned the king long and hard, and eventually he relented and signed the hospital over to the City of London and endowed it with property and an income. And with that, the future of Barts was secured. So St Bartholomew survived. But by the 18th century, the medieval buildings were well past their best, and architect James Gibbs was brought on board to redesign the hospital. And this is the James Gibbs designed courtyard. Now, to my mind, Gibbs is one of the most important of all English architects. He's up there with Inigo Jones and Sir Christopher Wren, and this is an amazing piece of design. The East Wing here in the First World War was used to treat many, many soldiers and is going to become a high-tech cardiac arrest centre. Over here, the West Wing was always specifically for female patients and continues to be so. It's a state-of-the-art breast care centre. We'll be going over there and having a look later. But first, I want to focus on the North Wing. Now, this was always designed to be the hospital's showpiece, and behind these doors are some real architectural gems. Now just look at this. Now, ideas don't really come much bigger than free healthcare to rich and poor. Now, the story goes, back in the 18th century when the Board of Governors built this place, they wanted to decorate the main staircase here in a flamboyant style that was suitable to the size of this inspirational idea. And if you wanted style and elegance, you got an Italian painter. Now, when William Hogarth, the famous English painter, best known for his satire of London life through cartoons, heard about this, he was furious. He stormed down here and said, English architecture at its best, we should have an English painter. And he offered to do it for free. Now, in the long run, he became a governor of the hospital, so he certainly got something out of it. But this is what he created.
After the break, I'll be finding out the secret behind Hogarth's masterpieces. And I'll be discovering which building has inspired some of Britain's greatest scientific inventions.
Welcome back to Behind Closed Doors. Today I'm on a journey of discovery around buildings of inspiration, places that have in some way touched all of our lives.
Coming up, I'll be getting behind the closed doors of a building that has been inspiring scientific discoveries for over 200 years.
That is fantastic.
And I'll be discovering why the ideal for a utopian life turned into a living nightmare.
It got to the stage, it was unbelievable what was allowed to happen.
But first, I'm at St Bartholomew's, looking at how England's oldest hospital combines healthcare with inspirational works of art. These magnificent paintings by William Hogarth can be found in the north wing of the hospital and show two New Testament stories. The one on the left depicts the Good Samaritan parable. The other shows Christ at the pool of Bethesda healing the lame man. Here to tell me more is Barts archivist Katie Ormerod.
And what is the significance of the two sections of the New Testament that he's chosen here?
I think he's just gone for themes that are particularly pertinent to a hospital. Obviously, healing of the lame person and the various other sick and injured people that are featured in the painting. And the Good Samaritan, as well as the healing element of it, there's very much the charitable element of it, which is, of course, what Barts was founded on. There's a story, although not confirmed, that Hogarth used patients from the hospital as models for some, if not all, of the figures in the painting.
And what are these worth now?
Roughly 3 million for the pair.
Wow.
So he was very generous, if you
So
look at it
actually
that
he was
way.
far more generous in giving them
Absolutely.
a finite
Turned out
cash.
much better for us, yes.
Yeah.
The public don't often get to see Hogarth's paintings up close like this, except during special viewings. But if you think this staircase is inspiring, behind the door at the top is an incredible record of Barts' fundraising history.
Now this is very special. It's the Great Hall, and you can see it's dominated by these benefaction boards. This lists all the people that have given money to Barts over the years, and it shows the year, the name, and the date. What have we got here? Miss Martha M. Bingley, £100. Up here, Prince Albert, 1844, 50 quid. Now that's quite interesting. That shows he's a bit tight because the minimum you needed to give to become a governor was 50 quid. So he's just crept in there. Goes all the way back to 1540s. I mean, that's an incredible document just here on the walls. And over here, it's a beautiful piece of 17th century stained glass work, and it depicts Henry VIII granting the charter for St Bartholomew's Hospital.
Barts was again threatened with closure in the early 1990s, but for the second time was saved thanks to public support, allowing it to emerge into the 21st century as a cardiac and cancer centre of excellence. The West Wing, which was practically derelict until 2002, has been completely transformed into a state-of-the-art breast cancer care centre, thanks to a £13 million charitable donation, which has funded not only its medical equipment, but contemporary works of art that create a relaxing and healing environment.
There's something very humbling knowing that there's been a hospital on this site since 1123. And I think it says something about the purity of this idea, healthcare for all. And it's beautifully expressed in the architecture of Gibbs and the artwork of Hogarth. It's been here 900 years. Let's hope it's here 900 years from now, still inspiring, still caring.
If you want to find out more about St Bartholomew's Hospital, you can visit its permanent exhibition, which also includes works of art. The next destination on my journey around buildings of inspiration has been at the forefront of science for the past 200 years. And what happens here touches all of our lives.
Discoveries made here allow us to switch on a light when it's getting dark, boil a kettle when we want a cup of tea, even watch TV programs like this. In fact, 10 of the 100 or so elements that make up the known universe were discovered here. So where am I? The Royal Institution, Mayfair in London. Creative ideas? Well, this place has it in bucketfuls. Behind these doors, Michael Faraday pioneered the use of electricity. Humphrey Davy discovered laughing gas, and James Dewar invented what we now know as the thermos flask.
The problem was, instead of attracting the masses, the intimidating facade of the Royal Institution became recognised as a place of the elite. But all that's about to change following a £22 million renovation intended to get everyone to come along and be inspired. It's still not fully open to the public, so we're getting an exclusive preview of what lies behind its closed doors.
Look at this beautiful Georgian plasterwork up there. Really delicate, really fine. There's something fantastic about Georgian architecture. And this here is a statue of Michael Faraday. He's the guy who made the use of electricity possible, and this here is his electromagnetic induction coil, which makes all of that happen. So we've got a lot to thank him for.
The driving force behind the Royal Institution's interior redesign is its director, Baroness Susan Greenfield, one of the UK's leading experts in neurochemistry.
I think we need to capture this idea that coming to the Royal Institution should be as exciting, as fun, as worrying, as stimulating, as controversial as going to a good movie or going to the theatre.
How has the alterations to the building reflected this change or this new energy?
The changes to the building, it's hard to explain just how radical they are if you weren't familiar with what it's been like before. This has exceeded my wildest dreams, thanks to Terry Farrell, who's the lead architect. And I think what Terry's watchword has been is circulation spaces.
One of the most important spaces is up on the first floor, where the Royal Institution's famous Christmas lectures have been taking place since 1826. This is the Faraday Theatre, where many eminent speakers have inspired the masses, including Michael Faraday himself. Today, however, it's inspiring an increasingly younger generation of budding scientists.
I'm very excited. I'm about to undertake an experiment with a rose, a lettuce, and 12-year-old Connor, who's got a hammer. OK, Connor, what are we going to do?
Right, well, we're going to take some roses and some lettuces over here.
OK.
Right.
You start with the rose?
Yep, we're going to start with the rose, and we're going to pop it in there.
Yes.
It's going to make a nice loud crackling noise.
Whoa!
Lots of vapour everywhere.
What's in there?
Liquid nitrogen, which is minus 196 degrees Celsius.
And the heat of the rose
is actually causing it to boil. Yeah.
And of course, in the meantime, we're freezing it.
Yeah.
And then what happens?
Right, we're going to take it out, and it's nice and white. We're going to take it onto the black mat, and we're going to smash it.
Whoa! So it's like porcelain?
Yeah, it's like glass or porcelain, yeah.
That's
it's all crisp.
Yep. Now, what's the relevance of that to the Royal Institution?
Well, James Dewar actually invented the thermos flask, which is what this is, and he invented it for holding liquefied gases. So we usually like using to hold hot chocolate and tea and stuff, but James Dewar actually invented it to hold really, 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 really cold liquid gases. The point of the Royal Institution is that it's not just for the big boff scientists, it's for ordinary people as well.
Next up, the lettuce. That's a wonderful way to explore science, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the elements of the refurbishment perhaps most likely to get even more bums on seats are the ones on the ground floor. It may not be ready to take orders just yet, but the new restaurant at the front of the building has been transformed and incorporates old scientific bottles and test tubes into the lighting. And just behind it is the more informal cafe, featuring some of the Royal Institution's most notable scientists up on the wall. Again, the stunning light is made up of 60 pieces of scientific glass. This magnificent atrium used to be a courtyard, but has now been opened up and covered in glass to allow natural light to flood in. Even though the Royal Institution has the oldest laboratories in the world, it's still at the cutting edge of science. One of the scientists working here is Dr. Paul Southern, who's showing me how nanotechnology and biomagnetics are being developed to tackle cancer. This fluid, which contains billions of minute magnets, has been engineered to target cancer cells, where it's vibrated and heats up, which destroys them.
Oh, wow.
You can see it's very strong because the way it actually attracts to the magnet. And as you pull the magnet away, you can see the...
That is fantastic. Look, it's making spikes.
Hopefully, this pioneering research should be ready for medical trials in the next few years.
The £22 million that have been spent renovating this place have not only made it more accessible and user-friendly, they're significantly improving the research facilities. For 200 years, this has been the site of invention, innovation and discovery, and as we've seen, that is going to continue.
And since the Royal Institution is now fully open to the public, there's no excuse for missing out on all the new and exciting facilities it has to offer. While Barts and the Royal Institution were buildings that inspired great ideas, the building coming up was an inspirational idea in itself.
It evolved out of a radical idea to replace rows of rundown Georgian terraces with not just family homes, but shops, restaurants and entertainment. In effect, creating a whole new version of a London village. It's a big idea because it's about a new way of living in a big city. And this is it, the Brunswick Center.
The Brunswick Center in London's Bloomsbury has just undergone a £24 million facelift after years of neglect, made it a virtual no-go area for many of the local residents.
I mean, it still looks a bit like a modernist starship or ocean liner has crashed into Georgian London. But it's a real destination now. Before, it was just the kind of place you avoided or scurried through to get to the Renoir cinema over there.
The architect who came up with a visionary scheme for this luxury residential and retail complex in 1959 was Patrick Hodgkinson. But before he could start on the design, he had to overcome strict planning regulations that banned any buildings over 80 feet high. His solution was to create the housing in 2 rows, leaving a pedestrianised precinct down the middle with car parking underneath. It seemed like the perfect plan.
Except a small bit of government legislation that overnight gave people who rented furnished apartments the same rights as those who rented unfurnished apartments. Now, this whole area was full of furnished apartments, and the cost of evicting them, of compensating them for move out, suddenly skyrocketed. The whole scheme had to be shelved. But Hodgkinson wasn't going to be beaten by this. Oh no. He and his team approached the newly formed Camden Council with the idea of taking the tenants out of the rows of terraces, demolishing them, building this scheme, and then putting them back in. Crucially, turning the whole place from being luxury apartments into council housing.
Architect David Levitt was involved in the original design of the Brunswick Center. He recalls how the prospect of social housing had a radical impact on Hodgkinson's plans.
And as soon as the potential retailers heard that they were going to be selling their wares underneath the council estate, they just vanished. And so it was never properly completed, not to the standard that it should have been. And for instance, it was never painted as was originally intended. So it never really succeeded as a commercial shopping venture.
Far from being Hodgkinson's dream, in the 1970s, the Brunswick Center became a place of nightmares, a decaying and desolate council ghetto.
What happened to bring it back to the current state we see today?
In the 90s, there were suddenly, because they were so out of fashion, it became fashionable to like things that were out of fashion. It does rely on purchasing power, and the 25 million or so that's been spent on this building altogether is entirely derived from the revenue from the shops. If that revenue wasn't coming in, this wouldn't have happened to the building.
And looking around the retail part of the Brunswick Center, it's clearly been revitalized to great effect. But can the same be said of the housing areas? After the break, I'll be finding out what it was like to live in the Brunswick Center during its darkest days. And I'll be visiting the literary home of one of this country's greatest prime ministers.
Welcome back to Behind Closed Doors. I'll be giving you my own personal preview of some of the amazing buildings you can see in a one-off series of special events. Today I'm looking at buildings that have been inspired by or have inspired some of Britain's biggest ideas.
Which is what brings me to the Brunswick Center in London's Bloomsbury, a radical 1960s vision of urban living, which has just had £24 million spent on bringing it into the 21st century. But now I want to find out what it's like on the inside.
This is one of the residential areas of the Brunswick Center. You can only get in here if you live here, you're coming to see someone who lives here, or during open house. The real tragedy is that despite this incredible shapes and this powerful piece of architecture, it's all just a bit scruffy and tatty back here, especially when you compare it to the shopping pedestrian area out there, which is beautifully maintained.
I'm on my way to meet Josephine Ford, who is one of the first people to move into this part of the Brunswick Center when it was completed.
When you first moved in, was there an expectation that this was a success, or was going to work, or was the future? I mean,
absolutely.
How did you feel about it?
Absolutely. Everything that was needed for residents was here. Cinema, everything that you wanted. Shoe repairs, everything. And it was a tragedy that they let it just get so dilapidated, and then all the winos arrived, and it got to the stage it was unbelievable what was allowed to happen. Excrement all over the walls, and really and truly it was very, very sad. And then they put the intercom system in, where the door. We didn't have that in the beginning. It was just all open plan, literally. You walked into the lift, there was none of that ringing. That eliminated a lot of the vandalism. It's a unique location. The building itself is such a lovely concept of urban living, isn't it? It really is. So it should never have been allowed to happen. Never, never, never.
So after 26 years of neglect, the multi-million-pound investment is bringing the Brunswick back to life, clearly paying dividends in the public parts, although it seems there is still some catching up to do in the residential areas.
Clearly the resurrection of the Brunswick Center from failed vision to utopia is only half complete. But all the problems that there are don't seem to be due to that big idea, rather to what has gone on since. And that big idea of high-density, mixed-use, urban city living is incredibly relevant to today. It's a more sustainable way to live, and it would allow us to provide all the housing we need without having to expand our cities. So rather than being some throwback to a checkered past, this place could be seen as an inspiration for our futures.
Anyone can go and visit the Brunswick Center's shopping precinct, but you need a visitor's pass to go inside the residential areas. But if 20th century modernism isn't your style, then this next piece of architecture is for you. Inspired over 100 years ago by one man's love of literature.
The next building I'm going to see was built as a memorial to one of the greatest political figures this country has ever known. He was a giant of the Victorian age, leader of the Liberal Party for 25 years, Prime Minister no less than 4 times. I am, of course, talking about William Gladstone. He was born in 1809, educated at Eton and then Oxford. And by the time he was 80, he'd amassed a personal collection of 32,000 books, which became the basis for the only residential library in Britain. And this is it, St Deiniol's in North Wales.
Gladstone was a lifelong scholar and a voracious reader and collector of books. His passion started at a very early age, and his collection grew throughout his student days and his parliamentary life. But it was only in his later years that he had the idea to make his personal library accessible to the public, or as he put it, to bring together readers who had no books and books who had no readers.
Now you might be wondering what I'm doing with a wheelbarrow full of books. But the story goes that when Gladstone was 80, he wanted to move his library from his castle to a building that he'd had specially made called the Iron Library. It was about half a mile between the two. So he started loading the books by himself into a wheelbarrow and pushing them. Now I've got about 60 books in here. So that would have taken 500 journeys. That's 500 miles pushing a wheelbarrow at 80. They don't make them like they used to.
It was only after his death in 1898 that funds were raised to build a more fitting home, just under a mile away here at St Deiniol's Library. It was designed by John Douglas, a prolific architect at the time, who styled it on the Tudor H-plan country house.
The building is made of this rather fine red sandstone, and the quality of the stonework is very high, actually. It's got these lovely mouldings on the windows, the stone mullions. I mean, it's really sort of typical Victorian Gothic revival stuff. Feels, you know, very, very welcoming, which I really like.
Gladstone wasn't only a scholar and politician, he was a very religious man. And looking at the architecture, you really get a sense of where he found his inspiration. The inscription over the door reads, "Favour merciful God," and above it is a statue of Saint Augustine, one of the most important figures in the development of Western Christianity.
On the front of the building over there we have Dante, and over there we have Aristotle. So there's this incredible mix of classical knowledge, of literature, of learned theology, and obviously of true religion. It says a lot about the man. It says a lot about this place.
Gladstone's big idea was to provide scholars and readers of any faith or belief with their own temple of peace, a place where they could stay to read, study and think. But his vision was only fully realised when he died, and his family funded the residential wing of the building, making St Deiniol's the first and only residential library in Britain. Having welcomed its first resident in 1906, it continues to welcome students from all walks of life, who can stay for as little as a night or as long as a year for just a nominal fee. But the soul of this building is, of course, the outstanding library, built to inspire future generations.
This is the whole point of this place. From the original 32,000 books that Gladstone left, there's now 250,000. But I mean, it's a beautiful space with this big timber frame going up. And then in the middle here, you've got all the reinforcing holding up that lead lantern that we saw on the outside. I imagine it's exactly as Gladstone would have hoped. Now, I understand that Gladstone had a habit of writing in his books, is that correct?
That's right, yes. He used to make marginal annotations where he agreed or disagreed with what was written in the text.
Just like rubbish, underline. Can we have a look at some? Right, so what's this one?
Well, this is one of Gladstone's school books from his time at Eton College, and we have here a little doodle, perhaps of one of his schoolmasters.
Extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, how old is that? That's got to be nearly 180 years old or something. Quite lucky he became a politician, not an artist, but, you know, they're not bad.
This is a volume by Edward Lord Thurlow entitled Poems on Several Occasions. At the end of this verse is printed, "The author did not finish this poem," and Gladstone has written underneath, "What a mercy."
That's funny. Wonderful. Well, it's certainly an extraordinary place and absolutely unique, I imagine. There's a really nice detail here I wanted to show you about the way in which the timber roof structure meets the stone outer wall. So you've got this lovely big lump of carved stone that sticks out, that juts out, corbels out of the wall. And then you've got these timber sections that start to corbel out further to support this principal truss. I love the fact, big chunks of wood, traditional kind of oak pegging here. It's a very old way of building. And then you've got the bookshelves kind of built in and cut around so that everything's fitting together really nicely. Very nicely detailed building.
There are around 8,000 books that Gladstone made personal notes in, and, not surprisingly, these are a huge attraction at St Deiniol's. But you too can see them if you pay to use the library or simply go along to one of the special open days.
It has been said that books are the biggest idea, the best invention that humanity has ever had. And if anyone understood that, it was William Gladstone, because not only did he leave his entire collection of books to the nation, but he also left £40,000, that's the equivalent of £2 million in today's money, to create a place where people could come and study in a learned environment. And that's exactly what St Deiniol's is. It's a wonderful place to visit. Gladstone left it here for you, the people of this country, so you've got no excuse not to come and see it.
While Gladstone's idea was to inspire everyone with literature, the final doors I'm getting behind today are to a building that was created to inspire raw talent with the magic of theatre.
If you think of St Deiniol's, built 100 years ago as the elder statesman, then the next building I'm off to see has to be thought of as the Young Pretender. It was born out of an idea from Sir Laurence Olivier to give younger members of his National Theatre Company, based at the Old Vic in London, a chance to produce international classics in an edgy style for a young, fresh audience. And so in 1970, the Young Vic was born, built as a cheap temporary structure a stone's throw from the Old Vic. It was conceived to challenge everything that traditional theatre stood for.
The Young Vic was constructed at a cost of just £60,000 and was only ever intended to last for 5 years, but it became an instant international success. And so it continued for 30 years until the fabric of the building was literally falling apart.
That was 7 years ago, and this is the Young Vic today, following a £12.5 million redevelopment process that has turned a temporary theatre into a permanent one to inspire future generations.
Unlike the previous bland facade, the new building is made up of differing styles in keeping with the philosophy of the theatre company. So at one end is this textured brick building, very much in contrast to the other end, which is covered in this eye-catching metal mesh, lit to stunning effect at night.
And I think this is the ultimate piece of the architecture here. Look, they've just subsumed this old butcher shop into the scheme, and that's the facade right there. You can still see the old number, Wilson Brothers and 66. And look here, the tiles from the inside have been kept. It's this take it as you find it, let it all hang out, rough and ready approach. And that continues behind those doors. Now this is not like any box office I've ever been in. And again, these tiles from the butcher's shop continue. And they were thinking about trying to match in with the old green tiles here. Basically, they couldn't find any, so they just thought, well, let's just smooth it over with a concrete render, keep it exactly as it was. So you can see where the old tiles have been chipped and left as they were. And here, it's the old meat hooks for hanging the carcass. So they've really kept all of the features from the old butcher shop. So there's a continuity within the use of the space and within the memory of the community. It's really sensitive stuff.
Kevin Fitzmaurice is executive director of the Young Vic and had a big hand in the renovations.
The old building, I think they'd forgive us for saying, was no longer fit for purpose when we closed it. We literally had water running down the inside of the walls. We wanted a building that was fit for purpose, that would work in the 21st century. But also, we were trying to future-proof it as well. So what we want to try and do is enable directors and artists who come and work here in the future to be able to do whatever they like. It's like a handmade workshop. Every show that comes out and everything that we produce here is unique, is different in its own way, and is very particular. And what we were obviously after was a building that enabled us to do that, that encouraged us to do that.
It strikes me that the moment you step through that door, you're in some kind of stage set, some kind of theatre environment.
Yeah, again, I mean, that's very conscious. If you were to sit here all day, you would see the stage crew turning up in the morning to begin working on the next show. If you were here an hour and a half before the show, you'd see the actors arrive. Everybody comes in the same door. It's an attempt really to be very honest about how theatre is made in order to open it up and make it more welcoming for more people.
Join me after the break when I'll be giving you a sneak preview behind the scenes of the Young Vic and talking to one of its most successful directors.
This whole floor here will be flooded.
Yeah, the whole area will be flooded.
Welcome back to Behind Closed Doors, where today I'm exploring visionary buildings that have inspired ideas and shaped our lives. Now, you might think I've taken a detour into one of London's fashionable West End bars, but in fact, I'm in the Young Vic Theatre in Waterloo, which prides itself on being one of the most exciting and accessible theatres anywhere in the world.
The Young Vic was completely renovated in 2006, but it's good to see the designers have maintained the flexibility and edginess which defines the theatre company. From the old butcher shop, which is now the box office, through the rough and ready bar and restaurant, to the very heart of the theatre itself, the auditorium, which is where I'm heading next. The public aren't normally allowed backstage between performances, especially when they're redesigning the stage, like they are now, but I've been given a special pass.
Now, this is actually the outside wall of the original 1970s auditorium, and this is the clever bit, because what they've done is built a new skin outside that building, so you have the auditorium and then a new access corridor right round the outside. And so that has allowed people to access into the theatre from lots of different angles, and has actually given them 20% more space. Now, in here, you can also see how they took that original performance space and extended it up. Originally, the roof was up there, the height of the second balcony. So everything above that second balcony is new, including that massive lighting rig up there. But the same principle that were behind the 1970s design continue, which is that this space can be customised for every single production.
Matthew Dunster is an actor, playwright and highly acclaimed director who finds his true inspiration here at the Young Vic.
What makes it so unique an auditorium to work with?
In a normal theatre, you would just have something similar to what we've got here, which is a kind of beginning of a cross arch. It's a stage and it faces the audience, and that's traditionally what we're used to. But when you come into this theatre, there's just so many options, you know. Actually, what we're stood on now, you can take it out and replace it with those seats you've got there. I mean, in the time since we've reopened, I've seen glass boxes floating in the middle of it. We've had trees that disappear right up into the top.
So why is this so important to you, you know, to your kind of idea of this space?
Well, I think when you stood here, you get a real sense of how close you can be to every member of the audience. And if it's full of young people screaming, shouting, you can create this kind of circus environment, which is about the live experience. At first we thought, you know, what can we do in terms of where we put our audience? How can we constantly change that relationship? But then we started to realise that because there is nothing precious about this space, you know, we can clad the whole of it in hardwood to create a cement factory, and we're about to flood the whole thing to create a sense of post-Katrina New Orleans, you know. So
this whole floor here will be flooded?
Yeah, the whole area will be flooded, and the actors will perform. 10 actors will perform the whole play up to their knees in water.
Well, it's certainly not traditional theatre, but that's what makes the Young Vic so exciting.
Well, what an inspiration. The architects here have been both innovative and sensitive, with the materials, the layout, the rugged detailing, and the way they've preserved this butcher's shop. Rarely have I seen a more harmonious relationship between an organisation and its building. I mean, what's more, I truly believe that this redevelopment has actually enhanced that radical vision of a class-free, inclusive and challenging theatre that was behind the Young Vic all those years ago.
And if you want the full theatrical experience, all you have to do is buy a ticket to one of their productions.
Today's journey has been all about inspiration. From Barts and the Royal Institution, which have stood the test of time to bring state-of-the-art medicine and science to the world. St Deiniol's with that big idea of sharing knowledge. Brunswick Center trying to shake up the way we live in cities, and the Young Vic trying to revolutionise theatre. I think the big lesson for me has been don't be afraid to think big, because it can result not only in some amazing buildings, but also make the world just that little bit better.